Hey everybody, I'm going to be talking about project 4, and this is where we begin using CSS divisions or elements that divide or divs divide up your HTML page into very distinct divisions. HTML5, which is a new way of doing things. It's new, it's been rolling along and developing over many years, but now it's the official actual language. And so we have to begin understanding and utilizing the power that it has for HTML markup and CSS style that goes along with it. So in the notes for today, some of you we're going to begin these things, so I want to go over these things so some of you don't get confused with what we're doing. First of all, we're going to be looking at notes about divs and IDs, compound selectors, and group selectors. We're going to talk about box modeling and what that means. Essentially, the box model breaks things into boxes, and these boxes can define sections of information. And so we can actually have boxes within a box if you like. We're going to have a container box, and we're going to have a container box that goes on the outside here that wraps around information, but then we're going to have boxes on the inside. And these boxes on the inside are going to be HTML5 elements, and they're going to have the proper semantic elements for HTML5. If you go to the W3 schools and you look up HTML5 semantic elements, you're going to see that there are a variety of them. Well, what's important is that we use them to compartmentalize or divide or div up our content information. When you go to a web page, web pages are divided into different parts. This, if I look at my schedule here, I'm going to have different parts of my page. I'm going to have, obviously we have our head region, but we have a header region, and I have a navigation region. And those are divisions or regions within my web page. So for example, I have a navigation region over here. It's inside my head region. So this section is actually a box that is floating in kind of a unique location. And so if I look at my tools here for development, I can look at these different parts by going to my head region, or not my head region, my header region, and I have the nav region. As I select these different things, I went into this section in settings, more tools, and then I went into developer tools. This allows me to show that the body, if I back this up a little bit, if I look at the whole page, the body contains everything. A header contains just this region up here, the navigation that, and then my section region contains this portion, and then I have a footer down at the bottom here that contains my footer region. So I'm actually creating a box, sometimes boxes within boxes, and that is actually really important. So if I look at my code, I start to wrap up my code in specific areas. So I have links for my navigation. That's the head region, my body, my header. I don't really have much in my head except for a picture and then my nav. And then I have in my table a whole bunch of stuff that we'll get to later on. So what we're going to be doing is basically marking up our pages using these distinct HTML5 semantic elements and then styling that with our CSS. So I want to make sure that we're building on these principles from the very beginning. So when you go to the class, you're going to get there's a zip file. When you get that zip file, you're going to download that zip file, and it's going to contain information. It's going to contain different web pages. Those web pages are your basic starting place, okay? Your starting point. So for instance, when we begin this, you're going to see, if I open this in a, let me see which one it tells, web careers. Okay, so web careers. If I open this in a text editor, such as Notepad, I have some of the code already laid out here, and it starts out kind of with our elements, or the core. We have our HTML5 declaration, we have our HTML language, English, we have our character sets, we have our title, and we have something new here that's called what's called the Google Shiv, the Shiv. If we go to our HTML or our W3 schools, and you go to here and you go to the Shiv, you're going to find out that we have to pretty much upgrade or reteach or update older browsers. Older browsers such as Internet Explorer 6 or older have to have basically a patch to fix it so that it can understand HTML5. Because remember, HTML5 standards didn't exist, but some people are still using those older browsers that did exist. So these older browsers have to be educated to read or understand some of these elements. So Google, they've developed a Shiv, and basically it's something that you insert. It's basically code that you insert in the head region of your code in this section right here. Now it's written in a comment, but Internet Explorer will read that and it will run a script in the background and it will educate your browser so that it understands HTML5 elements. So you can go to the W3 Schools website and you can look up, I just searched for Shiv, and I'm going down here and I am inserting just this green text in the head region of my code, which looks like this. Okay, that will make sure that my HTML page actually displays correctly. If I go to my current website, you'll notice that I have that here. So this is being displayed with, I have that just in case someone has an Internet Explorer less than Internet Explorer 9, it's going to run the Shiv. Okay, so when we are looking at the code that I've given you, we're going to begin marking it up. Notice that when we start, we create a whole container that contains everything. It's like a big box. And inside that one big box, which is called a container, and I make a div by defining it. This is a non-HTML5 element. It's a division, it's a div with an ID called container. Now, that being said, we're going to use HTML5 elements that are semantic, that actually define what they are by the name. This is a nondescript kind of division, and that's how it used to be for all the divisions. It used to be nondescript and you had to give it an ID name. So each one you had to actually name yourself, and then you had to close it yourself with a nondescript div tag like this. So it's a /div. Well, that if you have too many of those, it gets really crazy difficult to manage. So HTML5 is going to give us divs that, well, they're not divs, but they are divisions that have the opening and closing tags read the same way. So a header and /header will close it. Nav and /nav will close it. So what we end up doing is, for instance, we have the main container here. Okay, now if I want to put information in as a header region, say I want to put this H1 section in as a header region, and I want to put in my list in as a navigation region, I can do this. I'm going to put in my header right here. I'm going to indent this, and I'm going to close my header with a / header. Now, if we were to do it the old way, we would have had to put a div with an ID of a header, and then I would have had to close it with a div / div. But now I can clearly see where this starts and where this, or where this starts and where this ends. Same thing for my navigation. I'm going to put in nav, and it actually is nav, and I'm going to indent these. My indenting is a little bit extreme here, but you can at least see it. And then I will have nav / nav. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do for these different parts of my HTML now. I have a header region, I have a navigation, and I will have more stuff down here, content and that sort of thing. And then at the end, where I put my copyright, I'm going to put in a footer. So after I get down here, I'll put in footer. And this will be, footer. And I'll indent this. Alright, so that's the basic thing I'm going to be doing, alright, with this. Now, of course, I would save this as I start to mark things up. There are other things to mark up, but hopefully you'll get the idea. And now we'll make a CSS that will be part of how relating the external style sheet to this one. So once I start to mark up my page like this, I have my navigation, I'm going to have my header, my navigation, my content, my container, my footer, on and on and on, whatever else you need. Once we're done with that, you're going to do that for all your pages, but we'll set up a CSS sheet to go along with it. In my next video, we'll look at how we set up the CSS sheet.